Okay, so if you've ever tried to grow tomatoes, you've probably stood there clippers in hand and wondered, should I be cutting this thing? It seems so simple, but getting it right, that can be the difference between a few sad little tomatoes and a harvest that's, truly spectacular. Let's dive in and figure out how to do it the right way.
I will never, ever forget the first time I got a little too confident with my pruning shears. I went to town on my tomato plants, just trimming away, and when I proudly showed my grandma my work, she just took one look, kind of shook her head, and dropped that line on me. And you know what? She was totally right. My enthusiasm had gotten way ahead of my knowledge.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? When you prune properly, you get stronger plants, way fewer pests, and bigger, sweeter fruit. But a few wrong snips, especially on the wrong kind of plant, and you could literally cut away your entire harvest for the year. The stakes are actually pretty high.
So how do we avoid that disaster and get all those good things? Well, it all boils down to one simple, absolutely foundational question. You have to answer this before you even think about picking up those shears.
Yep, that's it. Seriously, get this one answer right, and pretty much everything else just falls into place. Get it wrong, and well, you might be heading for a very disappointing summer salad.
So tomatoes basically come in two main flavors. Over on the left, you've got your indeterminate, or vining tomatoes. Think of these guys like marathon runners. They just keep growing and making fruit all season long, right up until the first frost. And on the right, those are the determinate, or bush tomatoes. They're more like sprinters. They grow to a specific height, produce all their fruit in one big burst, and then they're pretty much done.
And that one difference in how they grow, it changes everything. Determinate types are your set-it-and-forget-it plants. They're perfect if you're making sauce, because you get all your tomatoes at once with very little pruning. Indeterminate vines, on the other hand, are for snacking on all summer long, but they need you to pay attention and keep them focused and healthy. So, here is the most important takeaway. If you prune a determinate bush tomato like it's one of those vining types, you are literally cutting off the branches that are going to give you fruit. You could end up with a beautifully tidy plant with almost no tomatoes on it.
All right, so let's assume you've got an indeterminate vining tomato on your hands. Now we can get into why pruning is so powerful. And I promise you, it's not just about making the plant look pretty. It's all about making it stronger and way more productive.
See, without any pruning, an indeterminate plant can turn into, well, this. It's a tangled, dense jungle of leaves. And this kind of overgrown mess, it traps moisture, it blocks the sunlight, and it basically hangs out a giant welcome sign for pests and fungal diseases.
When you prune correctly, you get 3 huge wins. First, you open up the plant for better airflow. That's your number 1 defense against fungus. Second, you let more sun hit the actual tomatoes, which helps them ripen up faster and more evenly. And most importantly, you're telling the plant, hey, stop wasting energy making all these leaves and focus on what really matters, making bigger, tastier fruit.
Okay, so now we know why we're doing this. Let's get into the how. And honestly, it really just comes down to finding and dealing with one specific part of the plant, the tomato sucker. A sucker is just a new little shoot that pops up in that V shape or axil, right there in the elbow between the main stem and a leaf branch. If you just let it go, that little sucker will grow into a whole new main stem, and that's how you end up with that tangled mess we just saw.
You see that little junction where a leaf branch meets the main stem, that tiny shoot popping up right in the middle? That's your sucker. For these vining tomatoes, the rule of thumb is to remove all the suckers that grow below the very first cluster of flowers. And here's a close-up. That new little shoot right in the middle there, that is exactly what you are looking for. And the trick is, when they're this small, you can just pinch them right off with your fingers. Super easy.
Now, how you remove a sucker really depends on its size. The key is to catch them early. If they're under 2 inches, you just pinch them off, no problem. If they're a little bigger, say 2 to 4 inches, use some clean shears. You don't want to tear the stem. But if you find one that's already 5 inches long or even bigger, it's often best to just leave it alone. Removing a branch that big can create a huge wound and really stress out the whole plant.
I just love this bit of wisdom. It totally reframes the whole idea, right? You're not just hacking off a part of the plant. You're gently guiding its energy, its ambition, toward the most productive thing it can do: grow delicious fruit.
So, let's put it all together. For your very first pruning session, here's a simple little checklist. First, wait till the plant is about 1.5 feet tall. Then start at the bottom. Remove any leaves that are actually touching the soil. That's just a highway for diseases to climb up. Next, clip off those suckers below the first set of flowers. And finally, don't forget to gently tie the main stem to its stake or trellis for support.
Now, knowing what to cut is half the battle. Knowing what not to cut is the other half. Avoiding just a few common mistakes can save your plant a ton of stress and, well, save your harvest.
The mindset to have here is all about restraint. This isn't about making your garden look perfect like some kind of magazine cover. It's about making smart, strategic cuts at the right time to help the plant do its thing. A lot of the time, less is more.
So here are 4 huge mistakes to avoid. Number 1, never prune a stressed plant. If it's super hot or you just transplanted it, give it a minute to recover. Don't go crazy and remove more than a third of the leaves all at once. That's just too much of a shock. And remember our first rule. Go easy on those bush-type tomatoes. Finally, always try to prune when the leaves are dry. That helps keep diseases from getting into those fresh cuts.
So as we wrap this up, I want you to start thinking about pruning less like a chore you have to do and more like a discipline. It's really an act of partnership between you and your plant.
Every single time you make a cut, you're making a conscious choice. You're choosing to protect the plant from disease. You're choosing to redirect its energy into making amazing fruit. You are literally shaping the outcome of your entire gardening season with purpose.
You know, there's a reason the idea of pruning is such an ancient and powerful metaphor. It's not about punishment. It's about preparing for real, meaningful growth. By removing what doesn't serve the plant, you're allowing it to become its healthiest, most fruitful self. So the real question isn't just how you should prune, but what are you pruning for?